The KSA test is rapidly approaching, so we're going to look at a couple things that you will see in the TestNav platform whenever you log in to take your KSA test here soon. Students will find tools at the top of their KSA test page, including forward and back arrows, a section where you can review and bookmark questions, a toolbar, which is particularly helpful during the math test, accessibility tools. Also, you want to pay attention to what question you're on and make sure you're always in the correct test. While you take the KSA test, you'll be able to see how many questions you have on the test, as well as how many you've not answered by clicking the review bar at the top. Any that you've not yet answered will show up and have this yellow circle around it. You'll also see this button that mentions bookmarks. If you come to a question that you're finding particularly difficult and you want to come back to it later on in the test, you can click this button, Bookmark, and it'll save that question. You can then go to the review button itself and it'll show the little bookmark on it so that you have an extra way of knowing, oh, I need to go back and answer that question before I submit my test. When you come to the end of a section, you'll be met with this message. It'll show you any questions you left unanswered or that you bookmarked. You definitely want to go back and answer those questions. You don't have a chance of getting them correct if you don't at least make an educated guess. Don't forget to use the tools that the KSA provides. The pointer is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to use it to mark objects, access your toolbar, and select correct answers. The notepad tool allows you to open up a little notepad and take some notes on a question, try to reason things out if you need to, maybe do a little bit of pre-writing. The Answer Eliminator tool is a little X icon that you'll see on your answer toolbar when you have multiple choice style questions. It'll allow you to X out answers that you know are not correct. This is obviously a good strategy for narrowing things down if you're not sure what the answer is. The Desmos Scientific Calculator tool will be able to be used on part of the math test. Part A, you will not be able to use a calculator. On part B, you'll have this tiny little button, which you should not forget about. It'll allow you to use a calculator and it will make the test much easier. Do not forget to use the calculator tool when you have access to it. A few other tools you may or may not run into, one being the Protractor tool, which allows you to pull up this and use it for helping to answer questions. You may also run into the ruler tool, which allows you to pull it up for questions. You can use this one for a straight edge, which could be used on some different types of math questions. The Dictionary and Thesaurus tool opens up an actual dictionary and thesaurus that you can use to help you answer questions. Use it, especially for some of your writing when you have issues with spelling, or if you're not quite sure on the definition or meaning of a word, you can use it to help you out. Don't forget that a dictionary will give you definitions, whereas a thesaurus will give you synonyms. So if I put in cold, it's going to give you a variety of synonyms, related words, and antonyms. The highlighter tool can be really useful, especially when you need to read longer passages. To use it, you could highlight some important part of that writing, something you'll need to look at later to help you answer the question. Click a color to help you highlight that information. You can also get rid of it by highlighting again with your pointer and then clicking this button. This one may seem incredibly obvious, but things can get a little bit confusing when you are working on a little Chromebook. Your page that you're working on for a question may have one or more scrolling bars that you need to look at as you go through questions. So you may have a bar over here on the right side of your screen used to scroll down a page as a whole, but you may also have a little passage or question that you need to scroll through too in order to answer the question correctly or to even know what the information is. Some words are provided a glossary definition within the text just because they're that difficult. For example, this passage right here, if I scroll down, and you happen to run into a word that has these little dotted lines below it, you can actually click that word because KSA essentially doesn't expect you to know it. That word stevedore is one basically nobody uses today. It means someone who loads and unloads ships. It knows that almost nobody is going to know the definition of that word, so it goes ahead and provides it so that you can click it and know what it means. It gives you context. Let's quickly look at the reading test because it'll give you some tips from within that you can use for basically any other test that you're taking over KSA. Now, this is a sample from the 6th grade reading test, but it applies to 6th, 7th, and 8th. You're frequently going to be given some sort of nonfiction article to look over. This one is titled From Team Moon, How 400,000 People Landed Apollo 11 on the Moon. It's a pretty lengthy article. And it of course has some kind of infographic or picture or thing within that is also going to be used to help answer some questions. It's pretty lengthy because it's going to be used for a lot of questions. On this sample test, there are 7 questions related to just this article from Team Moon. Now, it's going to give you different types of questions on KSA2 to try to trip you up as it goes along. You might go through and highlight some of these things specifically that might trip you up. For example, this one requires you to select 2 correct answers. If I just put one answer in, even if I'm correct there, I can't get it right unless I select both correct ones. You'll get standard multiple choice questions, but you'll also get things where you might need to read a specific paragraph, analyze it within, and again, select a couple things. Don't forget to read the questions extremely thoroughly. And don't forget to read these articles extremely thoroughly, highlighting important information and things like quotes within that can help you on questions as you go. A lot of the times these are not the most interesting articles in the world, but keep in mind that this is one of the last things you'll be doing this school year. And if you have a thorough understanding of this article, you're going to have a better shot at answering these questions correctly. Speaking of questions, let's look at a couple other types that you'll get. Short answer style questions will usually challenge you to do something like analyze how the author supports the central idea. If you don't know what the concept of central idea means, it's something you might want to explore a little bit before the KSA, because I guarantee it will almost assuredly come up on the test. It'll also ask you to support your answer with evidence from the text. This is key. You might give the best answer in the world for this part, but if you don't support your answer with evidence from the text, then you're not going to be able to get full credit. And that might be something like a quote from the text directly that you put within your answer. You have a much better shot of getting it correct that way. With other types of questions too, if it looks a little bit different, take some time and don't get tripped up. For example, this one asks you to go through a drop-down menu and select the correct answers. If I go a little bit further, this one asks you to compare 2 different passages. This passage from Neil Armstrong is going to be compared with from Team Moon. Note how you can select between the 2. Don't forget that sometimes KSA will stack them up like this. It is almost assured that on your reading test you will get some sort of question like this, an extended response writing type question where it asks you to compare and contrast something. This one asks you to compare and contrast how the 2 authors present the history of the moon landing. So I need to show how between these 2 articles, how they present the moon landing the same and how they present it differently. You're comparing and contrasting. You're showing what was like and what was not alike. So you're going to support your answer with evidence from both texts, meaning you need to do what? It means you need to have some sort of direct quote or statement from both of these articles in order for you to have a shot at getting full credit. That's going to end up being quite a bit of writing. You'll have the time built in to where you can do it. Just don't forget this part of supporting your response with evidence from both texts. As you get into some of the higher grade levels, particularly grade 8 on demand, you may be presented with a lot of different things to read and a lot of different things to quote from. Try to use them all if you can. Teachers, if you want to run through any of this individually with students, you can do so by looking at TestNav, going into Kentucky, going down to practice tests here at the bottom. Under practice tests, you'll find the 6 through 12 online testing tutorial if you want to go through the different settings and tools they can use, or you can find individual tests to look at practice questions with students.